One. Hi everyone, me and Nisha are back with another season, I'd say, of the Edge podcast for CHROs. We've got a very interesting guest again to start this another amazing season with. First of all, I want to thank everyone for the response that they've given and the kind of feedback you've sort of been sending us, which we sort of incorporated. And I mean, I would say that it's all an iterative process, and I think we're getting better with every episode and with every season as well. So I think before we sort of get into the episode, let me quickly interview. I mean, sorry, tell who our guest is tonight as well. So we've got Srinivas Reddy, who joins us from MetLife Global Shared Services, which is a global in-house center with more than 3,500 associates. He's the director of human resources there and has around 25 years of experience in the business process management industry as well. So prior to his current assignment, he's worked with various with Hero ITS, for example, and Genpact as well. And he's roughly been around the talent acquisition space for quite some time and has his fingers very deep into the composition benefits, which is what our episode tonight is going to be about as well. So other than this, he's also been certified by eCornell on advanced strategic HR management, and by qualification, he also holds an executive MBA from the Indian Institute of Management in Bangalore. Other than that, the other fun parts about Srinivas, which has personally appealed to me, is the fact that he's an avid cyclist. He's completed 11 half marathons, 4 full marathons, and various expeditions as well. So that's brilliant. So, Nisha, would you like to introduce our guest as well? I think we can get Priya on as well.
Yeah, I think Srinivas and I kind of spoke, and we felt like we need to start this season with Srinivas, and we kind of need to bring out a topic that is very important because the pandemic changed things. Is how should India learn from the West on compensation and benefits, right? And Srinivas seemed to be just the right person to have this discussion with, and his own experience as we progress through the episode will show us why. So I think, Srinivas, thank you so much for joining us. It is an honor. You've got amazing experience. So thank you so much.
Thank you so much, Varun and Nisha. And Varun, really appreciate the impressive introduction that you gave. I'll hope I'll live up to it. But nice of you to articulate it. Thank you so much, and thanks, Nisha, for having me. It's a pleasure. And yeah, let's take it forward.
Right. This topic is a bit loaded, I think, Srinivas. It's loaded only because we're going to question a lot of status quo here, and I hope that we continue to do that, because I feel like that's our job. So, Srinivas, the first question to you is, how can organizations become clear on the outcomes that they really want to incentivize, right? So what is the starting point? Because I mean, as employees, we are used to the general, right? Healthcare, bonuses, where some organizations have a fixed and variable pay. But beyond that, if an organization gives us anything, right, we're really happy and we're like, oh, this is a differentiator for the organization I work for. But you and I were talking the other day. Why should it be a differentiator? Why can't it be the norm that the organization is giving us a plethora of of benefits? Because at the end of the day, we're all humans, right? And the organization is made out of humans. I'm sorry, I'm packing a lot, but just it's just something that I feel strongly about.
No, I mean that's a very valid question, Nisha. In fact, I think there are a lot of I would say myths, quote unquote, that's going to get burst post pandemic, and how situation will unfold in the next maybe 6 months to 1 year to 2 years and 3 years and 5 years down the line. What do I mean by that? I think as an industry, services as an industry in this country has been approximately maybe 2 to 3 decades old. It isn't as old as in the US or any other developed country, which has been there for more than maybe 6, 7, 8 decades. Right. So I think we're still learning and we're still understanding and trying to reach where other countries have been there. But I think this pandemic is going to give us one definite incentive for organizations to look at is clearly on the benefit side. We've never had the importance of benefits as much as which is happening right now. And I think we're in that inflection point, if I have to call it out very clearly, to say that organizations would like to ensure that they start looking at talent, not for just compensation, and say that, you know what, I have a differentiated benefits. It's just not the compensation any longer, right? I mean, compensation, I'm there already. There is only a certain amount that you can always pay to an employee, and you can't go beyond that. And what do you mean by benefits? And I'll talk more as we keep moving ahead. But clearly, flexi work happens to be one of the talk of the town, which is happening today, that organizations are really trying to attract talent by saying that, you know what, do we have a flexi work, arrangement? What does it mean that I'm going to come to work when there is a need? I'm going to work from home when there is a need, right? And the need is not just the employer, but there is an employee need also that's going to be coming. I think those are some of the shifts that are going to be happening, Nisha, as we keep moving ahead. And I guess the pandemic is really fast-tracked, as we've seen very clearly evident in most of the IT companies. The digital transformation has happened fast-tracked. What used to happen in like maybe 3 years or 4 years, it's really happened in like 6 months or maybe a year, right? So that's really put us accelerated mode to say that, what am I supposed to do in 2025? I've actually started to think about saying that, what am I going to do in 2021? Because that much, fast track has really happened for the organizations, be it in terms of their bottom line, their revenues, their gross margins, their whatever you want to call that as, right? Any metric, any financial metric that's been met by most of the organizations for them to fast track it. So one of the core for them to, go back and look at is clearly the talent. So I think that's one of the reasons companies will change the way we're looking at it. And benefits, I feel that will really play a big role. While the compensation, which is your base pay, your variable pay, long-term incentives, they've been there, done that, they're bit. But I guess benefits is one of the things that's gonna really expand quite a bit in the next couple of years.
Let's dive sort of a little deeper into the same thing, right? One of the things that I think has come to light, I'd say, especially given the fact that every team, I feel right now, this is a personal opinion, right, that every team in every function, I'd say rather, has their own subculture within it, right? They've got their own ethos of working, they've got their own, ideas, they've got their own yeses and nos to certain things, right? So how do you structure incentives, I'd say, for both team-based and personal incentives as well, compensation benefits? How do you go about with the two differences there? What are the nuances, fine prints, etc.?
So, and this is done by different organizations in a different way, Varun. Clearly, the one factor or a gating criteria or a qualifier, if I have to keep it, for organizations is their top line, right? If they have ensured that they have a maybe 40% EBITDA or a 20% ROI on the capital employed, and they've been able to meet their numbers, that's the first criteria to say that, what, I've hit my, like for example, any sales, right? I've been able to ensure that I clock my revenue for the organization by X amount of dollars, X amount of $1 million, whatever it is. So I think that's one clear parameter, right? Which is not where initially employee will have a role to play at a very direct level. Indirectly, of course, they'll have. So I think from an organization standpoint, it's very clear that the metric is being designed by them, which is really a top line, and say that is how, if I am not going to meet my numbers, then I'm very sure that my ability to, percolate down the incentives, percolate down my bonuses, percolate down my payouts to the stakeholders, shareholders, employees is going to clearly go down. Right? That is my first gating criteria. Second would be clearly the performance of the employee, which happens at a very grassroots level. This is where a business unit would come into picture, or a line of business would come into picture and say that, okay, this particular business unit, which has approximately 120 employees or 200 or 500, whatever that number is, it's an adjective. And then say that within these number of employees that we have, every employee has got cut out their roles and responsibilities, right? If they have been able to meet those roles and responsibilities that are set up by the KRAs, KPIs, whatever you want to call that as, transactions, which means they've been able to meet the target. We've been able to meet the numbers. If they go over and above and then say, maybe they over exceed by 10%, 20%, 30, 40, 50, 60%, they're clearly going above than what they're expected to do as an employee. So that really calls out, Varun, to say that I think employees being able to deliver more than required. And that's where I think we should really go ahead and reward the employee based on the performance that he or she has delivered on the job that is required them to do. Right? That's where their play would come into picture. And if they're able to contribute, and if every employee is able to contribute, right, 110, 120, 150%, then what they need, automatically it's a pyramid, right? It keeps going up and up and up, right? So everybody, if it's a business unit which has 200 people, everyone's delivering more than 100%, clearly at a business unit level will deliver more than 110, 120, 130%. And if there are 5 business units, everybody is doing the same way, it's by natural that the organization is going to go over than required number of transactions, revenues, numbers, whatever you call them. So I think that's where the organization will be in a position to go back and say that, hey, you know what? I think this year we've had a great year in terms of revenue, in terms of numbers, in terms of employee feedback. So I think we should be able to go back and give more incentives to the employee. So I think that's where there is a clear demarcation. There are few industries, however, I'm talking this more from a services product or be it a SaaS, be it any other industry and manufacturing, but they could be other research-based, institutes, organizations which are very minimal, which do not have, any customer to look at it, any stakeholder where they're going to be looking at. There's no NPS, there's no product that's really coming out. Their, research and development is clearly to do something that's going to happen maybe 5 years, 8 years, 10 years down the line. So they got to really think ahead and come up with some of the things that are going to benefit, the future forward of the organization, not what's happening today and tomorrow, whether have I met my revenue numbers, have I been able to do that? So I think it's very important that employee understands this whole piece, and it's the role of the organization to explain the employee that what is my role as an employee and what am I doing and how does my work really impact the global organization, the larger organization, and how do I need to ensure that I contribute in the right way. So those are 2 aspects I think every employee and organization should really consider and look at it.
I think one more thing there, before we really get into the next question, because it's related also, we're talking about, how should organizations really decide what the compensation strategy for various roles is, right? Or should be. Ones obviously that are mission critical to the organization, the core, let's put it that way, the ones that are getting the business. Of course, then, there are those which have scarce skill sets and, their niche talent that probably an organization would have. And then there are also support services, right? And how does an organization really think of compensation for all of these people? Should it be the same or should it be linked to performance? What would you think, Srinivas?
It's a good question, Nishan. It's a very ever-ending debate. And I can go on and on for this, and there'll be a lot of people in my fraternity who will be agreeing, who will be really agree to disagree, and then go ahead. The reason because and there have been a lot of conversations, surveys on this to say that what is the right way to pay the employee. I mean, is there a pay philosophy that we should really stick by, and how exactly organizations are thinking about it. And how important is it? Are we really paying for the role? Are we really paying for the employee? There is this always thin line that organizations, in fact, keep dabbling with. Generally, what happens is when there is the role that's really created by the organization, and then the incumbent comes into the role, right? Employee comes and joins, and once the employee joins and when he starts performing, what happens is more often or the other, the employee, if he's a good performer, right, he starts delivering much more than required. Then what happens is he starts overgrowing that particular role. That's where the organizations always grapple with it to say that, this employee has been doing extremely great. So what do I need to do? Do I need to pay more? But this role doesn't allow me to pay more. I mean, this role has got me budget for the organization to say that I can only pay so much. I can't go beyond that. right? So what happens if I pay more? If I pay more, will the employee be okay? And hey, by the way, if I end up doing that, then I'm also putting the organization at risk, right? And if it's not, one or two employees you can do, you can't do it at large scale. So it's very important to understand that organizations are always, or employees are always occupying a role in the organization, right? We very often forget as an employee to say that, they start considering themselves as the role. No, it's not, right? It's the employee who's really occupying a role and then is mainly doing a particular job, right? So there is this thin line, and it's very deep what I'm saying. And more often people really misconstrued and say that, you know what, I have been doing it and I'm really worth it. And, I have been overdoing this particular thing, so I should be getting paid. Hey, by the way, but the role expects you to do only 10 transactions. See, that's the reason where you have most of the developed countries, right? I've got this very clear demarcation done. We keep hearing quite a bit saying that, a 9 to 5 in one of the developed countries is really 9 to 5, right? Because they're very clear that, my role requires me to do 10 transactions per day, or these 10 things per day. So I will deliver it. Nothing more than that. I mean, I will take 8 hours to deliver. I wouldn't take anything less than. So that's where I think most of the employees kind of get this little miss in their head, and they always grapple with it, say that, that's where you have an employee getting dissatisfied because he starts feeling that, I'm doing more than 120 transactions where I'm supposed to do 100. So I should be paid more. I should be given more. And that's true for everybody. And by the way, I'm not talking about a very entry level. I'm talking it right from the bottom of the organization to the top of the organization. So it's very clear that, and the employee has to understand, how much am I supposed to be delivering and what am I doing here? So, so that's a very clear demarcation. I think we should keep it in, Nisha, and it's very tough. It's not easy. And more often not, the other organizations struggle with it. And they come back and say that, you know what, I don't think we can retain the employee because his expectations are going beyond, and we won't be able to retain the employee. And guess what? What happens after that? The employee leaves, who's a really high performer, high potential employee. And when the organization is looking for a replacement, the funny part is that more often than not, the other good leaders and most of the managers will end up having a person who's left the organization, right? They start saying that, you know what, by the way, this role requires you to do 10 transactions, but the guy who was doing this particular role was doing 15 transactions per day. So I need a guy who can actually do 15 transactions. So they start hiring for the person who's left, not for the role actually the person was doing. So that's where you have a huge issue in terms of compensation pay and parity that really comes into picture. So it's very important for organizations to define the pay philosophy right at the beginning and ensure that they drive it very deep in across the board and for every employee who joins, so that they understand where do they fit in the bill in the larger scheme of things, and does that make sense for them or no from an overall standpoint. I don't know if I've answered your question, Nisha, or have I gone completely out of the scope, but that's my submission.
No, Srinivas, you have answered it, and it gets me thinking of just one thing, right? In India, we don't have the culture that, hey, if this is my KRA, I'm just going to do this much and I don't care what the organization thinks beyond that, right? My incentives are attached to my KRA, not the extra work I do, but sorry, I mean, you get the drift, right? We think that our extra work will get us that incentive and what we are originally supposed to deliver. And unfortunately, that's a culture that most organizations foster also, right? Because that's when, we work longer hours, we try to pack in much more than we do. We would do if we were working in the West, say, because we know that, hey, we cut off once our KRAs are delivered or our OKRs are delivered because, hey, we're going to be assessed only for that and not for what we can put in beyond that. So I see that dichotomy here for sure.
So it has two things, Nisha. You bring up a good point. In fact, one is that. Second, there is also the economics play here. What do I mean by that is really supply and demand, right? Because there is a lot of supply of talent that I have today. For every role I have, 10 people coming up and applying for it. So it becomes very, very a different zone for the organization to say that, hey, you know what? It's okay. It doesn't matter if I lose the talent, because I know that I'll be able to go out and get it. So that's the one piece. And second, we've always been, unlike in the West, by the way, they're very clear. You go out, open a position, you will probably get, and I'm talking across the levels, I'm talking at even as senior as 20, 25 work experience. You will get people, but you would get probably 5 applications for one particular role. But if it's in a case in India, you would get that to be 10 or maybe even 20 in some cases. So that's where I think organizations have a huge issue to deal with it, saying that who's my right talent and how should I go ahead and who should I take the bet on? Is there somebody else that I need to do it, or who's that right talent that I'm looking for? And they end up having sometimes wrong people in the right jobs, right? So that's very important that organizations have to understand it. The other thing I would say is that I wouldn't call it a mistake, but the other debate that organizations keep having, and they realize it only after a period of time, when the organization wants to go and hire people, they always want the right talent, right? But what happens is they often find themselves in hiring the best talent. I'll repeat myself, right? I mean, there is a huge difference between this. More often than the other, organizations want to hire the right talent. They don't care about what the talent brings in or what has he done. Has he had any education? It doesn't matter, as long as he's the right talent for the job, right? What does it mean? It means having the right attitude, ensuring that you go extra mile, ensuring that you deliver more than required, you're able to add value to it, all of that. But what happens is we end up, organizations in the entire interview process, they end up finding the best talent, right? Which means the guy who's probably gone to a top B school, who's probably done 10 things, who's probably written some paper, who's theoretically one of the best guys, maybe a gold medalist. Sorry, with all due respect, I don't mean anything wrong here. But what I mean is they end up hiring somebody who's best. They never know, organizations, that whether the best is actually right or no. And that's where they've always find the talent, in the wrong place. And by the way, they only realize it after maybe a year, or sometimes even 2, 3, 5 years, right? So that's where you have, people, big organizations failing, not able to move ahead because you've not had the right talent at the right time at the right place. So you will miss that. So I think that organizations should always keep thinking and solving this, saying that what is the difference between the right talent and the best talent? And you should always draw a line between it and try to ensure that you move in the right direction. Else, the organization will go in a direction that you don't want to find yourself in that.
It was a super interesting point, actually, the right talent versus the best talent and all of these things. And given the fact that we are on the, what can you say, the trend line of drawing nuances here and trying to understand the fine print, one of the things that I think, which I don't know if a lot of people are talking about it genuinely, but right now we're sort of entering the Gen Z era. So anybody who's going to be taking the jobs of tomorrow, they're all Gen Z people who have different ideas of money, who have different ideas of a job, who have different ideas of everything, right? So how do companies or startups or anybody, right, should go about structuring the total rewards program? I'm talking about direct and indirect compensation benefits around the Gen Z and around the millennial as well. Like, how do you start thinking at least around those lines? Because I feel that the differentiation is necessary, because if you want to be retaining talent and you want to build leaders in the teams of tomorrow, you have to understand the kind of culture that these people bring in inherently, right?
So I think we're in again a tipping point here, Varun, to define that. I think, and we'll get to see and hear more as we keep moving ahead. Gen Zs, I'm sure, like any other Gen Ys and Zs, they're going to have a different approach to the whole piece. And I'll tell you one of the examples as recent, and I was having a conversation with another colleague of mine in a large organization. So he was telling me that they were hiring this particular role. Apparently, he seems to be a geek, but they couldn't hire, unfortunately, because of the ask that the employee had. I mean, the incumbent. He said, everything is great. Comp is fine. I can join. But here's what. I'm going to be taking about 40 to 45 days leave at a stretch once a year, every year. So I'm not sure what's your leave policy, whether you can give me or no, but 40 to 45 days is what I like. So, they're hiring.
It's a little weird how he had it planned in his mind.
No, he did. I'll tell you why. Because it was very clear. And we asked, saying that, the hiring manager asked, why do you need 40, 45, and that way to stretch? Because generally that's very unheard in any corporate life to give a 45 days off and to get. He says, no, because I do my, trekking and I do different parts of the world. So I'm very clear that I want to do this. And I have planned out for the next maybe, 6 to 7 years. Which date, where do I need to go, which country and which place? So I'm very clear that I'm going to do that. Right. So if y'all can give me a job which is going to fit in the other, 9, 10, 11 months, good to go. Otherwise, I'm not going to be, in for it. So I think the ask is very clear. And just by the way, by Gen Z, I think pretty young kid in the very early 20s. So which is, I think, the right thing. By the way, there's nothing wrong in this. If you ask me, if you look at it, it's just that the organizations will have to probably structure it, customize it to what that incumbent is asking for. Right? If you don't do that, now, unfortunately, the company couldn't hire him because the policy did not allow the leave policy. And he wanted this to be a part of the contract, employee contract, and say that, we'll allow you to take us at stretch 40 days leave, 45 days or whatever it is, and we're good to go. So I think more and more you will see this trend coming up. And you will, and by the way, today it is there in a very small pockets here and there, not many places. It's not like, for example, I remember some of the startups that have started about a decade back. They allowed work from home very freely, flexi work 10 years back. Today, it's become a reality for most of the large organizations. I mean, any large organization that you take, they're pretty much there. So I think organizations will take time to reach there and say that, we will design the compensation and benefits as per what the employee need is. Right. And that's going to change. That's going to differ. Like there could be an employee who would come up and say that I'm single. I don't have any family. Guess what? I'd like to change. I'd like to increase my term life benefit, by 4x instead of, giving me medical insurance or anything else because I don't need it. Or I have a personal medical insurance. Give me something else. Right. So you're customizing it as per what the employee needs it, not what the organization has to offer. Today, what happens is every employee is put into one cookie cutter. You like it or no, you get a term life. You like it or no, you get a medical insurance. You like it or no, you get leaves. You like it or no, you get XYZ. Every employee is different. I mean, I may already have a term life, which I don't want to take anything else. I may not have a medical insurance. I need a medical insurance, right? I may have something else. I don't have a car lease plan. So can you give me a car lease plan, right? So it could be different asks. So I think the whole piece of customization to the employee needs is going to change. And it's currently at the inflection point. I feel very strongly this pandemic has really taught the organizations to understand it. And talent is really taking that to their advantage, and which is the right thing to do. And I think that inflection point is being seen right now, and it will change in the country forever. It's only a matter of time we get to see it. And I'm sure this is going to happen in only a couple of years.
I mean, especially in COVID times, when I saw this trend coming in as well, that rather than restructuring the compensation, all of these things to suit the times, a lot of companies had concierge desks out there. So if anybody needed, let's say a new flat, or they needed a place where they could sort of go and isolate themselves, or they needed oxygen tanks or anything like on the go, they had all of these things which were just given it free of cost, the entire service as well, the entire coordination, the logistics of it. Right. And I think going forward as well, a lot of companies are tying up with different partners, channel partners, be it insurance, be it any of these kinds, of trying to bring them on board to sort of offer them as discounted or free benefits. And I think that's becoming slightly more mainstream as well. So which is pretty interesting, to be honest. Other than that, I also came across this case study, right? Which is there's a startup in the US called NextJump that it's an e-commerce company that essentially started linking its compensation to how you sort of went about and started helping your workers and everything. So it was a very social way of linking your compensation benefits and justifying your own growth as well. So pretty interesting trends are coming out. I think that brings us to the end of this wonderful episode as well. Srinivas, thanks again for being a part of this. It was pretty crisp and pretty to the point in terms of the pay philosophies that people need to build on, the kind of thinking mental models that people in organization should rather consider at this point in time. Nisha, do you want to say something before we part?
Yeah, my simple takeaway, I think Comp and Ben is a personalized and flexi Comp and Ben function.
Definitely.
What I got off from this conversation, it has to have those, those little leeways for the employees, and it can't just be sitting there as, this one thing that everybody has to avail of, right? So if it becomes modular, then, you can hire the right and the best people.
Yeah,
exactly. You could hire both of them. Yeah, very well put, Nisha. Right. Absolutely. Thanks a lot, everyone. Before you go, please hit the bell notification and do subscribe, because we've been noticing a lot of people who view our videos don't really land up subscribing. Please do that. Subscribe to our newsletter as well and follow us on LinkedIn. We'll be more than happy to take feedback and also connect as well. Thanks again for being a part of this episode.